Hello everyone. We're going to be streaming a bit of work on the map here, and we thought we'd go ahead and let everyone kind of watch as we do this. This will probably be a mostly creative stream. We may take some questions from chat here as time goes on, but I want to try and stay focused as we do this on the creative efforts we're trying to do. So I've got with me here Loco, and some of the other devs may be joining us as time goes on.
Greetings and salutations, everyone.
So the first thing that we need to do here is in our 3D terrain, which I'll pull up here. In the 3D terrain, I've added this kind of mountain ridge, and I need to add that to our map so that we can see that more accurately as we draw outlines here. So I'm just going to try and position myself 3D here. So there's this new ridge here that follows along the eastern side of the Lunar region. So here's Lantros over here, here's Alfgasa, and over here there's this new kind of cliff ridge. And I want to show this on the map so that as we continue working here, we're not missing important details. So you can see here on the 2D map that we're working from, it's definitely missing. So I'm going to go ahead and create some layers. Just real quick, I'm not going to get too crazy trying to make this into art. I just want to illustrate the missing detail. And I expect some parts of this will be fairly quiet because that's just kind of the way we work sometimes. So hopefully that doesn't bother people, that when I'm focused on drawing and stuff, it'll probably be a little quiet unless Loco or someone has something they want to convey.
Yeah, I can try hold the fort.
So I have to reorient myself. It's been a little while since I was doing this kind of stuff on Photoshop. And this is going to look terrible at first, but that's the way this always goes. I don't like that it's so high up on the layers here. Let's move this down and let's turn off the rivers. If I can find them.
Over the course of past few months, we have been working on the map quite extensively and have been adding all sorts of stuff you can see on the stream. The lines are sort of the trade lines, and of course POI, points of interest, camps and stops along the way.
Yeah, we've been putting some focus on, especially these trade routes. We spent some time last time with like these inns and camps, trying to make sure that travelers traveling between cities have plenty of places to stop along the way. We have a 3D terrain, but we haven't yet got to move our characters around in those. I'm just going to abort this because it looks terrible. And I just realized my rivers, I don't have the original river layers, so I don't want to have to redo all the rivers and everything. So I'm just going to say along this river, I think we tried to move this river, or we wanted to move this river, but somewhere around here there's that ridge, so we'll just knowing no. If that's knowing nothing, that's kind of funny because people were just asking this morning in general where knowing nothing has been. So it's kind of funny if that's you knowing nothing. People were asking about you. So let's move on. I don't think that's working. I'm going to have to spend some time, and I don't want to get totally sidetracked in drawing a ridge line all morning. Because you can see from the original, I've already done this because this color map, I wonder if I could just grab this, in fact. Let me think for a second. They'll be missing that river. Let's move on.
Oh, welcome back then.
Yeah, good to see you again.
Oh yeah, and Nelana exploration will be a big part of this game as well.
Yeah. Let's copy some of this style here, okay. So one of the things I wanted to start thinking about the positions of specifically was various ruins. And that's going to be a little bit subject to change. Loco, you had a good idea the other night about making sure that the ruins that appear on one side of the terrain are different from the other side. I kind of like that we don't have just having the same ruins all the way across the landscape seems a little boring. So I kind of like the idea that in the southeast we might have more of this kind of ruin versus the northwest where we might have a different kind of ruin more predominantly. So, and I think we talked about before when we do the ruins, I'd like to not just think of ruins as some other games just kind of like scatter them across the landscape, and that works fine. It makes sure that there's plenty of things to find everywhere. I do want to think about ruins not just as um, places for exploring and gathering loot, but try to approach them as if they were once functional cities. So almost like some of these ruins will be more like ghost towns than just a ruin with a single entrance. You go do a little kind of quote dungeon run. So we're just gonna have to jump into it here. I'll make a folder for it. I'm obviously
And
missing something.
yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if we can say it or not, but the nature of the ruins.
Spit miscellaneous rooms. Okay. What do you mean? Do you want to not talk about or talk about Chateau versus?
Well, about the nature of the ruins, we will be placing, the focus of the ruins.
Okay. Yeah, different ruins will definitely have different design, um, just kind of atmospheric looks and feels. I want the way the ruin that looks to tell the player what to expect in that ruin. So if you see, certain design cues, you're going to know this is a magical ruin, and I need to know, be ready for magical traps and stuff like that. Whereas if you see a different kind of design cue, you'll know, oh, there's going to be a lot of booby traps, and this is a very physical, ruin. There's not a lot of magic here to deal with. Um, is that what you're talking about?
Yes, and the types of magics associated with each ruin.
Yeah, there's almost certainly just going to be Moran, Ether, and Dream ruins. Moran is kind of like energy-based magic. Ether is kind of like a computing network kind of thing. You can do a lot of sci-fi kind of stuff with that. And then Dream is kind of cool because it's basically 3D objects and game objects that can be turned on and off via magic. Um, so I imagine Dream-based ruins to be a lot of puzzles where it's like you have to turn on or off some obstacle or some staircase to progress. And I always want there to be a variety of different ways to kind of defeat the puzzles and obstacles in these ruins. I'll probably still suggest that we stick with a primarily linear path rather than going through the front door and you don't know where to go next. I think that can be a little frustrating when you kind of have that overwhelming feeling of here's 500 little buildings to explore, little rooms to explore, and 90% of them are going to be empty. To me, that's not good gameplay. So, just some random thoughts. Let's try and get back on task here. So,
Yep, the map making.
and I'm going to make these a different color for now, just because we don't have them associated with any particular Um, make them ugly green, so I have to fix it someday. No. I'll just make them a color so that we have to go back and go through and make sure we fix these. So am I conflicting with another color? Yeah, it's pretty much Chat Toy color. I probably use all the good colors. Well, let's use magenta. It's always a obnoxious color, right? Which is what the tape you're using. Dang it. Couldn't decide going with white. So I'm just going to make a couple quick markers, and then we can just duplicate them and move them around a little bit. Put these out here where they're... Okay, so let's think about this a little bit. The Lantros region will almost certainly be where we start creating the cities, and it'll be almost certainly where we start creating, the full 3D world. We're gonna build using our new landscape editor. It'll make it easy to create, kind of like you see with this 3D thing. It makes it easy to create large landscapes, but when it comes to getting down on foot level and putting in a lot of detail, we have to start somewhere. So I'm almost certainly going to start over here in Lantros region. And I don't know, we'll see. We may include Alcazar in that.
The Lantros region will be pretty much the first region that we will
Yeah.
be working on extensively. So
It's cool as you get down here where the real detail comes in. One, I love that you can see Malkajoy from nearly everywhere. Same with the font sires, you can see them from pretty far away. So down here at this speed, this is about character walking speed. And I've done this kind of thing, just kind of testing how big the world is and how long it would take for a character to move. And this is actually extremely slow. Just walking from Lennar, which I'll pull up the map here, Lennar to Lantros, from here to here, I think covering that distance is maybe an hour or so at the current scale. And that's assuming there's no, I don't think it's quite an hour, it's like 40 minutes. But by the time you add in monster encounters and stuff like that, it is actually pretty, it'd probably take an hour to walk that. There'll be things like carriages and magic transportation to make that instant if you want, but those will have drawbacks because we're trying to create economy simulations.
yeah, knowing nothing, we don't know yet. We haven't built the actual mountains yet.
Yeah, and even this terrain is just based on a couple really rough height maps. It's just kind of a place for us to get started, figuring out what the scale of things are going to be. So Mount Gajoy and Kasal, I think we discussed. Let me just go over to Kasal over here real quick. Getting a little off track. Can we not see this in the stream for some reason?
You mean the terrain editor?
Yeah, can you not? I don't see it in the preview.
No, no. That's one
Oh,
of
it's yeah. Oh my gosh. So earlier when I was talking about it, no one mentioned that you couldn't see what I was talking about. I'm sorry. Let me redo this. So here I
no,
am.
knowing nothing.
Here I am moving around, and I don't want it to be locked to Photoshop. That's the problem. We'll sort it out, don't worry. I'm just frustrated that no one said that no one could see what I was doing.
Well, even I was assuming that you were showing things on the map itself in Photoshop.
Oh, okay. No, I was flying around in the 3D terrain. um,
So here we go with the 3D editor.
so yeah, this is like I was saying. This is just a real rough preview based on that image in the background of Photoshop with just some real rough heights we've put in. And I've been using this tool just to get a sense of the scale of things. So the old Eye of Kassa was something like 20 pages from the left side of the screen here to the right. There's about 20 terrain pages. And we're looking at about, I think, 12 under the new scale. But the new terrain pages have a little more detail individually. So it comes out being something like 80% of the area of the Eye of Kassa. So I don't know if that means Mount Gajoy got a little shorter or smaller. I assume it does because I'm not going to change the angles of it radically. But, and you know, this is rough, so we don't have a lot of this flattened out and such. But it's been a useful tool to get some sense of the scale of the terrain. I'll go back to Lantros over here and kind of do what I was doing before. Or maybe I'll go to Chalet. I'm sorry, this is the fastest speed. I should have probably made it faster. I see this in preview now, so I assume everyone can see the 3D preview.
Indeed.
Okay, good. So yeah, we've done quite a bit of talking about the size of this desert. If it takes, you know, an hour to cross this desert on foot, that's just going to be miserable. um, just absolutely miserable to walk across an hour of sand. We've talked about, you know, and that's what we're doing with the map is making sure there's plenty of points of interest and such along the way. So here we are in where Chalet, the city of Chalet would be. You can just see Mount Gajoy here in the distance. And this is going, this is the actual train engine that I'd like to use for the game. I'm going to continue to improve it. Um, it's fairly robust as far as being able to see, you know, distant details and such. So if I put this back on walking speed, let's go out into the desert actually. So here's, you know, closer to walking speed and walking scale. And you can just imagine, you know, how long it would take to cross a train at this speed. I think I've timed it, and like I said, going from Lantros to Chalet is about an hour-long trip. 40 minutes at best. By the time you add in encounters and such, it's going to be a bit longer. So that's the whole purpose of us working on the map is making sure that things like the middle of this desert, which over here is, you know, just kind of an empty. We've got one inn, and we've got one kind of like stream going through the desert now. We want to make sure that there's plenty of things to find out here because it's easy for me to just generate a bunch of terrain, but then it's just a bunch of generated, you know, procedural generated terrain. There's no points of interest. That's not good, you know, design. So let's move on. Let's actually try and get some work on the map done.
Okay, I see the map.
So we'll go back to Lantros region here. Let me get a hotkey for duplicating layers. Oh, there has to be a hotkey. You're kidding. Does anyone know if there's a hotkey? Because it's not showing me any sort of, like all these are like, you know, Control D to duplicate. What's duplicate layer?
Thanks, Nolan.
So I think let me think for a moment. Around the Lantros region, let's think about what was previously built there. Now we know Chalet has some very the Sans Azul is built on top of some very ancient ruins, predating the Chateau. Pretty much everything, all the known races. The ruins there are just so old, no one knows who built them. Let me just think here for a moment.
As you can see, in addition to the land trade routes, we have like a sea trade routes going from port to port. And it's not really even finished yet. We haven't done many trade routes among the northeastern part of the Antilia.
Sorry, my mic was muted. So what I was saying was we have some coral reefs up here that we need to do a little more research on. The formation of coral reefs to make sure that this is. I don't insist that everything has to be 100% geologically accurate, but I like to have a decent base, and I'm pretty sure the way that this coral reef is currently laid out doesn't make much sense from a. How does that work from a geography standpoint? So, but that's a bit of a side issue. Just
Yeah.
you said something about the trade routes, and I started to talk about that. So yeah, I was saying
Oh,
I'd like to use this kind of feature we have here, and decide what specific kind of race, or we don't have to know the exact race that was here, um, but what kind of what nature of ruins are there in the Lantros area? Let me think for a second. We know that ether chips come along about the time that the Tepi get the chalet, I want to say. So I think those are going to be, the chalet area is going to be a little heavier on the ether stuff. Does that seem accurate to you?
we haven't actually even talked about ether chips and the role they play in forming the units and currency.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we've talked about that publicly. The Tepi have had multiple currency systems over the years. Originally, their first currency was magic crystals, and that worked fine when just the gods were making magic crystals. But once magic became commonplace in society, and anyone could create magic crystals, it pretty much destroyed that economy. So I think there may still be. We've talked about the idea that there might still be maybe Lantros might work in magic crystals like currency. I don't know. That's a dangerous gamble to make because I think it's gonna be broken real fast. There's just gonna be too many magic crystals. So the idea was that they discover ether chips. I believe in Chalet. Ether chips being kind of like magic crystals for ether. They're just a magical crystal that ether happens to be associated with. All the different magic systems have a some sort of crystal that can um, take the mage out of the equation so that a magical system can continue to persist even though there is no mage present. So there's kind of a common theme between the magic systems. So ether chips, the Tepi discover. I was thinking it was going to be. It's not the Sans Azul necessarily. I thought it would be. Let me think for a second.
Of course, the type
Yeah,
when
sorry.
they discover them, they don't know what they are. So
Yeah, the Tepi don't know what they are, and that makes it a good currency because suddenly they have from this cache they find. They have thousands of these chips that they cannot reproduce, they cannot create, and they're shiny, they're cool. The Tapey like shiny things, that becomes a currency, and I think that's most of the currency is going to be the ether chips. This kind of started with the Alfka Saw having pearls as its currency, that we were going to have different currency systems.
And originally there was another type of currency we never used, the tithons.
Yeah, we've kind of moved away from that. Just because as you refine things, things get more and more. They start to solidify in a certain way that makes more sense. So back to the map. Let's try and make some progress on the map in this. I don't think we've done anything yet. It's so easy to get carried away talking.
And you wouldn't believe how many times it happens to us even off stream.
This is, I mean, sometimes we've made great progress on the map, obviously. There was a great one when we did all these lighthouses, but lately, sometimes we just get... To make good maps and stuff, you have to do all this brainstorming, so just part of the process, I guess. I'm tempted to put around Lantros, I'm tempted to put Moran ruins.
Well, we know for a fact that there is a abandoned sake garden in Lantros itself. The city is built sort of around it.
Yeah, there is one sake garden there. Boy, putting in Dream Ruins. That creates an instant complication because Lantros is going to be the first place we want to create. So that means we have to create 2 magic systems right off the bat. The reason I was leaning toward Moran is because we need the Moran for the Tapey, and then we could immediately reuse it for the magic runes. I know that's kind of a lazy approach, but always trying to make this more approachable so that we're making progress on the game.
Yeah. Well, it can be just garden,
Well, we have a Tapey garden or a Sake garden. Sake gardens aren't all over the place. They're very rare, actually. I imagine them being fairly rare. So I would say, yeah, we'll put... I almost want physical ruins now that I think about it. Magic and physical, I would say. A mix of magical and physical. Thing we don't have with Antilia is we don't have, like, this is the start city. In time, you're going to be able to create a new character and start them in any of the major cities. See, this is where you get into actual game design right here, like trying to figure out what's the right balance of stuff here. What's the right balance of being approachable from a dev standpoint that we can actually get this done, and being interesting from a player standpoint. I'm tempted to say physical ruins near Lantros. Just cities that don't have a heavy magical orientation in any direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And maybe throw in a few magic Moran ruins. So let's do one more here. And really these all should have been in parentheses, but whatever. Physics-based may be the wrong term because it implies that there's going to be like live physics all the time. Traps and stuff like that. I'd be curious how people feel about that when you play games like Oblivion and Skyrim, and you go into a ruin and there's a bunch of like those physics-based traps, the logs that roll down the side of a hill and stuff like that. Is that engaging to gamers? It's kind of cool that they exist. I can't say that I've feel like they're very effective in some way. I mean, obviously you're supposed to be able to spot them and not fall for every trap, but
But purpose of a trap is to surprise you, isn't it?
it is. But I mean, if you're walking through a ruin and you're constantly getting hit with these traps, it kind of, to me, it's a little tedious where you have to go real slow through a ruin and look for trip lines everywhere you're going. Um, we may want to
Yeah,
find a better a better way to describe these ruins other than booby traps. Now we do have things like caves, which may have all sorts of different insect nests. That too, physics are at times very unreliable. Um,
and if you imagine it, these were ancient towns and cities.
yeah,
So
kind of like more
why
like
would there
Ghost
be
Town.
traps?
Let's make a few. We'll just call it Ghost Town ruins for now. It's just like it's a. I love the idea of like a proper village or little city with a few little houses and a market square and stuff, but it's just abandoned and there might be things of interest to find in there, and I'd like to see them like overrun with overgrown with plants and such. Um, Maybe have some of the houses have creatures have made those houses into their nests and homes. So yeah, we'll have ghost town ruins. I was thinking just now that we also have these red fields over here. We talked about the village there. This village right here would almost certainly be kind of based around processing silk from the red fields, because that's basically where silk comes from, is these red fields here.
Uh-oh, poor Malay Beach got moved again.
Oh God! See, I knew this was something was weird about this version of the map. That ridge is gone and Malay Beach is back in the wrong spot. Oh well, I'll have to find where I made a few changes and merge them together. If we were using Toy Studio, none of this would be a problem. Guess I have to make it. Okay, so let's actually at least get one of these somewhere here. I like to try and place these kind of things where it makes sense. Like right here, I kind of saw this was a water kind of spot. There might be a couple little streams coming from this little mountain. So it kind of makes sense to build a little town there. Maybe up here too, on the edge of Lantros. That'd be kind of cool.
Of course,
Let's
that would
move
be
this
sort
one.
of a point of interest for the residents of Lantros.
It definitely feels like something should be here near this. I mean, we built a camp there, but yeah, maybe up in the mountains a little more. Stop snapping. Put some ruins up there. Trying to think what the purpose of these magic ruins would be. Harvesting water is important. Water is a thing is too when it comes to magic, you need an energy source. So even just having water mills near something like this is kind of handy. Sorry, I was just noticing chat there for a second. Yeah, I kind of agree that traps in ruins that are perpetually on, it seems unlikely after hundreds of years that you would have a ruin in which every trap hadn't somehow been set or hadn't failed just over the passage of time. Um, Especially with physical traps like boulders that roll down a hill. At some point, the wood holding them up is just going to rot, and they're just going to it's going to be dilapidated. Um, that makes sense in the context of a Elder Scrolls game, which not to talk too much about Elder Scrolls, but it makes sense in that context because they're actively maintained by bandits and such. They're not just something that's been abandoned for hundreds of years. I'm kind of liking this. Maybe in this area have a bit of a theme that the Moran ruins are up against mountains, um, near water and mountains. Does that make sense?
Um,
No.
we still need to we need to still figure out the exact nature, how we want to do. Uh, you were talking about like Miran having this sort of like flowing aspect, so would make sort of sense by the water. But
I'm thinking, Moran is about energy manipulation. They need an energy source because a magic ruin, it's not just enough to have a ruin that has a bunch of magic in it to me. That's fine in some ways, but I'd like there to be some purpose to the ruins, like you were kind of suggesting here. And I'm thinking that being along waterways, and even just being in the Lantros region because of all the wind, um, we would want to see like magical windmills or something where they're harvesting the energy to turn it into magic. Um, if that makes sense.
it does, yes.
The other thing to harvest for magic would be, the emotional energy from animals, which I believe would be that goes into that whole what's magically legal in different cultures. Are they allowed to just start harvesting life?
Or emotional energy as well.
And that's what they're doing. I mean, they're not like they're harming the creatures. It's just, it seems like we had at some point, I had some philosophical reasons why even the Tepi and Adora Ali may not entirely be cool with doing that all the time. Um, in this region, at least, it does make sense from a windmill, watermill standpoint. Seems like we need another lighthouse over here, too. Should be a lighthouse right here, wouldn't you think? Or on this rocky outcropping you can barely see.
Yes, that strait would certainly use a lighthouse.
Let's make one real quick. Copy Meep. I'm just going to put this up in our new group.
Well, knowing nothing, the ruins we were talking about, Jeff kind of mentioned that some of them might be just ghost towns with structures that are still standing, sort of, not just like piles of pebbles.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to see a variety of ruins. Some would be like little villages. Some might be towers. Others might be like, especially if the case of magic, kind of like kind of like utilitarian outposts where they're harvesting energy or performing some sort of magical experiment. Like I was thinking with this nice kind of loop here, it's kind of a great setup for having some magical towers with some, you know, point of focus in the middle, but I couldn't come up with anything off the top of my head quite yet. This is a great setup other than the fact there's nothing in the center to base it off of, so I'm not sure what the experiment would be here. I'll think about it though. Might come up with something. Let's try and make a little more actual progress on
on the actual terrain.
let's at least, and this may be wrong. This is one risk I run when we do live streams like this. Let's think about figuring out which regions are going to have what kind of different ruins. Um, I don't know. Maybe that's something I need to brainstorm offline. Eh, we'll do that later because that's going to take too much time. Let's duplicate this one more time.
Yeah, we have to name the lighthouse later.
Yeah, I do that sometimes where I just put a question mark.
Yeah, but it's actually kind of funny process. We have this type in names generator, and well, type in word generator, or type in like word like generator, or something of that sort. And we're running through the script and just picking names and words that we find interesting.
I'm just trying to find, because they're all named the same, the layers are all named the same. It's like, how do you pick just one of them? Okay. Um, oh, that's a perfect spot for one. I'm thinking this particular series of ruins, they all share some theme. They're all kind of up in the mountains next to water. And I might, adjust the position of these a little bit, but let me just look and think here for a second. Okay. Let's make more of these ghost town kind of things. And these might come in a variety of styles. So I'm just going to think of where
Yeah,
where we would almost certainly see some old cities. Like this lake here, just kind of, big body water like that kind of begs for someone would have, put a, um, built something next to it at some point in time.
yeah, knowing nothing. We already do have actually like mining camps and villages all around the map, but not my ruins of mining towns. That's actually a good point there.
Now, there's a ridge right here, so I'm trying to think how this is going to work. It's so subject to change, but I'll just leave one there. Anything else going interesting on chat? I haven't looked in a while. Yeah, mining village or a mining ruin. That's kind of an interesting. Because ghost town ruins are a good candidate for that sort of thing. It's a little tricky here to see the difference between where the desert begins and where the mountains are. Contrast isn't great.
The map is filling up nicely.
Now, I'm not opposed to having like just open fields and stuff. I don't think that necessarily that because you look at the map of some games and you'll see that there's kind of an almost regular, there's no area that doesn't have a ruin somewhere in it within, you know, an inch of map space or something. Every quarter inch of or every square inch of map has some point of interest. I don't mind having a couple points of interest kind of near each other and then an open area somewhere else where, well, it's just a giant field. There's no source of water. Port ruins. That's an interesting idea, yeah. An old port somewhere. Could almost do that at this ghost town ruins here. Seems. And I can see another one right here. Well, this is all seawater. There's no. I mean, this is a great little. Let me think about this because this is again this is a ridge. I don't know about this. This particular river is going to have to be moved a little bit, so we'll just move these when we do that, I guess.
Or you could have it in the sandy bay.
Over here. Oh, well,
Uh,
you can't see for
yeah,
15 seconds or so, right?
yeah.
I'll just put it in this area for now, and we'll, as we're actually creating the map and filling it in, we can decide where to put these things specifically.
We usually use the Skype conference call, the
Yeah.
screen sharing for this.
That way we can have, yeah, more instantaneous feedback. Otherwise, because right now Loco's watching the live stream, has to wait. Let's look back at Lantros because Lantros itself still feels there's not enough going on over here. I mean, yeah, there's a giant city. So basically, we have two ghost town ruins, Amran ruin, and a lighthouse kind of near Lantros. Let me think. Yeah.
Now, if you think in the terms of scope, how long would take the player to run from the new lighthouse to the river in the red fields? It's actually very hard to imagine the actual scope, how empty the things would be, and how many more ruins to add.
Yeah. We definitely need more because if this we put these inns and villages, basically a little under 1 day's travel apart, like half a day travel. This is where it gets all so theoretical with the we don't yet know. I mean, I can do with my 3D thing, I can do some estimating of travel times and such, but it's just so rough because we don't have a character you actually run with yet. So you try to rough estimate how long it would take go from here to there. Then you have to factor in, okay, how long is the day-night cycle in the game going to be? Which I believe we're going to go for, I think, an hour. We're going to go for an hour day-night cycle. It's the last thing we were thinking about.
We do have a sort of chart on the wiki, so.
Right. Well, I think, yeah, I'm not going to pull it up right now, but with the MMO,
yeah, either it was 2 hours or
yeah,
1 hour.
yeah, I think you're right. I think it was 2 hours because the MMO we did 4 hours, didn't we? It was a 4 hour cycle, and it was just so slow. I think it was 1 hour day, 1 hour night. So I'm just trying to think if that's the travel time. If going from here to there, that's a little bit more than one of these. That's literally like running for 2 hours and seeing four things. That's just not near enough.
Greetings and salutations, Faith.
What else can we do other than ruins that would be interesting? Obviously, we have small caverns.
Small caverns, groves. You can have like
Like,
small animal dens or
oh, right.
burrows.
Well, we have nests and stuff. We were doing that for the Alcazar. We were planning out where each nest and stuff. I don't know. That might be too detailed for this map because
Yeah, I was kind of
yeah, those are gonna be
yeah.
everywhere.
Yes, this is kind of small map. By the time we're done with everything, the entire map will be covered with signs.
I mean, yeah, this is 1-to-1 pixels right here. So, well, not in the video, I suppose. But yeah, here I'm already seeing things too enlarged. So let's not label that. What we probably do want to think about though is more um, just like general structures. Like I believe even in Kassaw we were going to add a tower.
Yeah, Zavalori, you could actually see we have the Tasiyama camps. You know, the Tasiyama are sort of nomads of the Taipei race.
In fact, we probably want to name these and give them a purpose. Because yeah, we're going to have a tower right about. It's going to be just like in those fields with the cactus fruit. We're going to put a giant tower. Does that make sense from a logical standpoint? Why would you build a tower there?
Well,
Watch over the
so
cactus fruit?
yeah, not really, but occasionally people like solitude to like to think or experiment and not be bothered by anyone or endangered others.
I mean, yeah, you generally you build a tower so that you can see over a distance and um,
Of course, there's this cliche of magical towers like Mage Tower.
well, I figured too the Taipei cities would have towers. At least Lantros has a tower. We've talked about that long ago. Um, Boy, now that I think about it, it's not in any of our current city layouts, is it? There's the Kisan Palace, the Saki Garden. We don't show where the tower is.
Mm.
Oh well, the tower was always going to be. Let me think about that because that tower was old. It might have been built closer to the wall actually, but that's actually a Taipei tower. That's not a.
Yeah, I have to refresh a lot of
I
stuff.
know, so much stuff we like talk about it for like it's the hot topic for a month, and then a couple years pass and you kind of like, oh yeah, there's going to be this. A lot of it goes in the wiki, but I don't read the wiki before every dev discussion. So
There's just so much there already, so
let's let me just put a quick note because I do know of one thing that's where is the thing I'm moving around? There it is. Okay. And it stayed behind. Okay. We'll just call this for now the Electros Wall and Towers. I mean, it's kind of like a part of Lantros, but I'll just kind of put it here, kind of as a note as to where that was built, because I kind of picture being right about there. There's supposed to be kind of like mountains on the east side of Lantros, and there's a gap at one point, which is where they actually land when they first arrive. But they end up building a wall and some towers there to keep the chateau away, even though they're magical creatures. They can just appear on the other side of the wall. What's the point? But
But you know,
it's part of their. They were very, they're very simple. They weren't really a magical race at that time, so they're thinking in terms of the chateau are to the east. We're going to keep the chateau off, out. Um, so they build the wall and the towers, and it's kind of the beginning of cities for them to build such a thing. So. Yes,
yeah,
knowing nothing. The outlines of the white is just kind of a rough plan of where the city region will be, where houses and stuff may be planned. I imagine on the extents of this, it's just farmland and such. Same with Lennar, it's probably just farmland out here. Just because by the time we talk about, a 3D map like this, to build this entire region with nothing but buildings would just be too much geometry. So I imagine the city proper is just a much smaller region up here with farms and stuff on the extents.
yes. By the time we like get to filling all this with buildings and other content, the cities will sort of become smaller with several suburbs and
Yeah,
outlying farms.
districts and such. We know for sure. I think we've planned out several districts for Aerial Thieves District and stuff. Lantros, I've kind of done the same. So
Yeah.
yeah, we need more. That's the problem with doing this map stuff is you always need more.
A lot of brainstorming goes into making these maps.
Yeah. Just trying to think too, what else would remain from older civilizations? Like farms, probably not still standing. There might be a dilapidated building, and that'd be it. Um,
Well, in ages past, I used to watch that sort of documentary that would show what and the progress of decay that would happen to our own civilization should we mysteriously vanish overnight. And within pretty much 100 years, everything but the greatest of buildings and skyscrapers would be gone, overgrown, and decayed.
I wonder if that's because of our building materials, or because like you build a building out of stacked stone. I imagine it's probably this. Yeah, I mean you can find stacked stone foundations, from uh,
Ages away,
yeah, pretty
yes.
long ago versus wooden framing and stuff. Yeah, I don't know how long that's gonna last.
Well, even the houses here in my own country, back from like the 1900s, we are keep finding the foundations underneath the lakes whenever the water gets too low, and
Yeah.
artificial ponds, and they're just pretty much stone foundation and nothing else.
One of the things I like to try and do with Antilia, and I don't know if it comes across, we're trying to think of Antilia and the world as like a functional world, not just like there's kind of like the high fantasy world where every creature is out to kill you. We were talking about this the other day, how every creature in a lot of games is just ready to fight you to the death, and it's like porcupine, why don't you just go run away? um, so it's kind of the same with wildlife and with civilizations. I'd like to have a little more, like yeah, ruins for farms and ruins of ghost towns, not just these generic ruins that you step into them and what is the not to pick on any particular game, but it's like you go into a lot of the ruins in these games. And it's just like, what is the point of this? Why did they build this? It's just a bunch of rooms connected with hallways and traps. I'd like to actually have Sure, you're going to have kind of like a dungeon crawling element to caverns or um, certain like magical ruins that are perhaps like scientific outposts or something, research outposts, not necessarily science, but research. But I'd like to have things have a point to them, not just be um, loot runs. Um, and I like the idea too that yeah that the ruins are functional enough that you could almost see some of these ghost towns might like we might actually build a tapey village on top of. I think that would be kind of cool. Just kind of hijack their some of their buildings and um, kind of move in.
It's quite common for like new civilizations to build upon the ruins of the old.
Yeah, it's like the Saki Garden in Lantros. Why, if you find some great architectural masterpiece, you're not going to level it, and build on top of it. You're just going to use it because, hey, free building. Um, and I kind of think the ruins would be a lot the same way. Granted, they're not too, like, you get into something like a magical ruin with a bunch of ether stuff on it. That might have too much risk involved. Not necessarily just with traps, but with, if you don't understand how a magical thing, what its function is, it may be risky to turn it on. As the tapir are well aware from the Sans Azul.
Yes, knowing we want an actual world, not a fantasy.
I think we might just call it there. And I'll do some more brainstorming on my end about what ruins we want to see more heavily. And if I'd like to know from the chat, was this interesting? Because I know a lot of this was us just kind of actively brainstorming. Was this interesting to watch, um, or was it too slow paced? Because if this is interesting, I mean, we can do this again. Obviously, I'd like to keep moving forward with the toy editors and stuff. And once we get the landscape editor here in maybe a month, I'd like to stream us actually creating terrain with it. But in the meantime, there's this kind of stuff going on the side where we're just, spending an hour or two in an afternoon just kind of brainstorming the problems of how do we lay out the world and stuff like that. And I kind of like getting the feedback from chat there. That was kind of handy.
City design and chill.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do a proper city design. That's one of those things that, me personally, I like to, before I do that, I like to read up on the topic of city design and figure out, okay, we got to build around a market square, or, here's the river, or here's the port, or, I find it kind of interesting to try and figure out how to lay things out. How would the residents of this town with this location lay things out? Where are things intuitively going to fall into place? But it is kind of, yeah, it's a slow process. Yeah, well, the feedback looks pretty good, so all right. I'll keep that in mind next time we do one of these development streams. I don't think we can do it every time because I think it's good to have a variety of different. If we live stream every time, it might um, affect creativity in one way that we're distracted by it or something. So I'll just kind of keep looking for things like this, though. If we're going to have an interesting discussion, I wouldn't mind live streaming this kind of stuff more because I think it is nice having more feedback from the chat. And I think everyone wants to be more in the loop of how Antilia is progressing. So, well, thanks for tuning in, everyone. It was pretty interesting. We got a bit done, and I hope we can do something like this again next time.
Yeah, good to see everyone again. See you.
All right, see you next time.